Hello, everybody. Welcome to Midnight Radio. I am your host, Jerry Adams. We're recording right now. Of course, you can't see us because we're recording on their own because we've had so many problems. We're using a backup program right now. But with me, I have Pastor, and he's going to help me pronounce his name, Jim Wilhelmsen.
Wilhelmsen. Yes.
Wilhelmsen. It's not a problem with his name. It's a problem with me. I'm from Texas. I'm trying to talk without an accent. Pastor Jim Wilhelmsen has a very interesting story to his life that's brought him to where he is right now, to this point in his life. I feel like these last few months, I've been riding along with him as I've been trying to contact him these last few months, and I haven't been able to do that. And I knew something was wrong because, and Jim, I didn't get to tell you this, but it's almost like you're booted from the internet. Every day that goes by, you're harder and harder to find than you used to be before.
Yeah, this is the truth. And at one time, I think some of it might have been for my own protection. But now I think it's just spiritual warfare. It's a battle. The enemy's trying to cut me off as much as he possibly can. But you know what? I peaked. I looked at the end of the book. He loses, we win. So I'm not accepting that. He thinks he's the prince and power of the air, but the air I breathe is created from the Lord, not him. So he's just a cheap imitation, and I'm not buying his lies. And the Lord has a plan. He's got a perfect timing, and everything is going to come together when he wants it to. So I'm not going to worry about it. It's like one of my favorite counterculture guys is Alfred E. Newman. He always says, "What? Me worry? I got nothing to worry about, and I won't get worried."
So Pastor Jim is here primarily to talk about hollow earth theory, and it's something that he's been working on for a long time. Not just that, he specializes in aliens, hollow earth theory, and demons, probably especially demons. He might have a major in some and a minor in others, or a major in all of them. But from the aspect of the things we've been dealing with, we're in the middle of a war, and he's been in the front lines of it. So we're going to start from when he first was involved in this. And when I say this, that compromises a lot of things that you guys don't know yet, but you're about to. But he's going to take us to his introduction of the knowledge that he has. And he wrote a book, and the name of the book is, I got it right here. Jim, help me out. What is the name of
Okay, I got a subtitle. It says, "Sometimes the Truth is Beyond Science Fiction." The book mainly is beyond science fiction.
Yeah, the name of the book
marketed and named of
is Beyond Science Fiction. It has a snappy picture of Hitler and an alien on it. And he put this out 24 years ago.
28 years ago now.
28 years ago. Holy moly.
Yep.
I knew about it 24 years ago, so I'm ahead of the curve, right? There's a lot of the things that are that are happening now, and there's more to come. We have the government saying that, UFOs are real and other revelations like that, but he came through this a long time ago. So, all right, we're going to go back in time to when Jim was a child and all these, when he first started this narrative that is his life.
Well, I had a unique childhood because I grew up in a middle class, coming from the Detroit Motown area. I mean, Detroit was the Motor City capital of the world. And so the neighborhood that I grew up in was an older part of Livonia, Michigan. And it was mostly auto workers, blue collar. They created entire suburbs to work at the transmission plant and some few other major big three auto companies that were locally in the neighborhood. So as my parents, we moved there in 1957 from Detroit, and my dad actually he bought the house as a frame and built it himself. He was a CB, so he was like a MacGyver on steroids. He could make anything out of anything. So that was a lot of fun having a dad that could do that. But then soon in time, in about the early 60s, Livonia became an exclusive neighborhood. It was all upper class people that were moving in, and it was the time of the sprawling suburbs and suburbia. And so we were on the wrong side of the tracks, so we were treated a little less than what should have been. And just 4 miles away on the other side of Telegraph Road was Brightmoor section of Detroit, the biggest, baddest, meanest town. It had a fame that even exists till to this day as being the most dangerous neighborhood on the entire country, and some even say on the entire planet Earth. And believe me, after growing up, now my grandparents lived there. They babysat us half of our lives. So I lived in both different communities, both different environments. So I got to see how 911 would come right away in Livonia, and how you had to wait 1 or 2 days where maybe somebody will actually show up eventually for checking out Brightmoor. Nobody wanted to go in there. It was a scary place to be. So I got to grow up in 2 different environments, and it kind of explains me for today. Now, when I lived in Livonia, and it was out in the country and way out in the boondocks, I was interested in all kinds of science, technology, sci-fi. I memorized almost every old movie from, the sci-fi days in that time, and I have a library, and I probably got it on video. But I'd always been fascinated by the space program. So right from Yuri Gagarin to John Glenn to the Apollo to the one mission on July 22nd, because it was my birthday when we landed on the moon. I watched everything all the way through, and I had always been fascinated by science fiction. And I used to have, as a kid, what I used to call science fiction dreams. In these dreams, I would first feel a ringing or a buzzing in my ear, and then I thought to myself, either oh no or oh boy, I'm going to have one of those science fiction dreams tonight. This is going to be fun. Except it starts out not fun. It starts out, I feel and sense a presence in the room, and I call them the shadow people. You can still see them just very out of your peripheral vision, but you can know that they're there. They kind of speak to you telepathically, and they scared the heck out of me. I usually would be so afraid I'd throw the blanket over my head and pass out. Then I'd wake up, and I'm in a ship, and I'm either in outer space or, one time I saw all my classmates there, and now the Greys did not get me, so I didn't get poked and prodded and all kinds of other genetic weird things going on. It was the Nordics that got me, and they were doing brain teasers, and they were doing what I would call flattering me, that these were necessary for sometime in the near future where I'm going to be called to step in and help out the world. So, that was the kind of garbage I was fed, but I would always have these dreams. Now, it wasn't until I was about 42 or 43 when I started writing my book, Fasting and Praying, and I had asked the Lord, I said, Lord, do I know anybody that's ever been abducted? And the Lord probably looking up here like that, and he's probably going, kid, if you only knew, and I'm about to tell you that those science fiction dreams I had, the buzzing in the ear, this is a typical scenario of a typical abduction.
God does have a good sense of humor.
Yeah. And so, I had been actually, once I found out and really started examining all of this, I discovered that I had been abducted apparently from about 5 years old up to about puberty, about 12, 13 years old. Then it just suddenly stopped, and it didn't bother me that it stopped. I just figured, good, that's, I'm done and beyond with that. But I later come to find out that this was all a typical, scenario for an abduction. I was called to go to California to Palm Springs, where L.A. Marzulli was doing his series on the Nephilim, and he had me come in there to do a series with him. And I had mentioned, I said, well, L.A., as far as abductions, this is more personal to me. I was abducted when I was a kid. He says, what? I didn't know that. I said, well, L.A., it's not exactly something you go around telling everybody when you're trying to explain to them about the end time deception of UFOs and aliens. And, that just doesn't help out too much right now. He says, well, I know Dr. Lear. He just lives a little ways down. Let's go get you checked out. Dr. Lear was the podiatrist who was
his name is John Lear, right?
Well, not.
It's not the same John.
Not the same one. No.
Okay.
Dr. Lear was a wonderful man. He was a podiatrist, but he developed a way to remove implants.
I do remember that.
Alien implants. And he had something in the scalpel was his iconic book that he wrote. Well, anyways, he made an appointment with me. I had a little bump in my head I thought was it. And he says, no, that's just a fatty tissue. He says, but you do have something in the inner cranial part of your brain. And he says, without a CAT scan, I can't really tell exactly how deep or anything, but it's broadcasting on a FM wavelength. And then Ellie looks at me and says, Jim, doesn't that concern you? And I laughed and I said, no. I said, I got saved at 23 years old. I was a pastor when I was 28 years old. And I spent from that time on coming against everything that he's ever worked for. I founded the first Christian Evangelical Motorcycle Ministry. From that, I founded the first biblical connection to the Genesis 6, what I call the Genesis 6 paradigm, and some of the related topics that are part of it, including would be the hollow earth. So I said, right from the beginning, I had understandings of these things from the Lord through the scriptures. And what he would always do is during a time of fasting and praying, I would pray and fast, and then I would write down. He would always wake me up for some reason at 4:00 in the morning, and he would tell me to write these things down so I wouldn't forget them. One time he told me something really cool, and I didn't write it down. I forgot it the next day, so I said, okay, I learned from my mistakes. This time I write everything down. Now, for some of you that aren't used to this, don't get scared that this isn't automatic writing. I'm not, somebody's not guiding me and I'm writing. I'm hearing God's voice, and he's telling me specifically things to do. So without interpreting it, I write it just what I hear. And then what he does as a backup, he shows me in the Word where these scriptures are, going back to the original language. You have to do that. You can't depend on just the King James's, better than the original. Some people actually say that it is a more accurate translation, but you got to go back to the original language. You got to understand the Jewish way of writing, which is pardes. Every Hebrew scholar knows what pardes is. It's like onion layers. There's 4 different levels of interpretation. There's the Dirash, the Pesant, the Ramirez, and the Sod. And each level can actually contain, one scripture can contain all 4 levels, sometimes 2 or 3. That's why we can get so much out of one scripture when you understand how the Hebrews wrote the Bible in the first place. So understanding these 2 links, proper hermeneutics, you have to know that there's certain rules to interpretation. You can't just take things cafeteria style and make it say what you want it to say. You have to actually go to school and learn some of this stuff to play catch up on dead languages. Ancient Hebrew is different from modern Hebrew, like ancient King James English is not like modern day English. Some of our idioms, some of our cultural expressions, we need to know customs and manners that existed back then to understand what we're being told in nowadays. So, and this all ties in with the hollow earth thing too. It's very important to understand some of these things, because otherwise we would have certain things go right over our heads. We wouldn't realize what profound things the Lord was telling us by his own words. So hopping back and forth from 2 different cultures like this was something that I grew up with and I became accustomed with. And it was something that why I could be, in one extreme, like a biker welder from Detroit. And then on the other hand, I can sit at roundtable discussions with some of the top scholars in the world at a round conference. And most of the times I noticed most of them would be quoting other scholars and their different ideas. I would get simply down to the chase. Let's quote the Bible. That's the most reliable. Here's what the Bible says here, and here's what it says here. And I remember the first time I was at a roundtable discussion like that, they automatically thought I had a PhD. And I did, if you count the fact that prayer, healing, and deliverance means a PhD, then yeah, I have that. I have a lot of experience in that. When I was pastor of the Christian Motorcycle Ministry, we had multiple addictions of hedonistic lifestyle. So we developed our own method and ways of being able to get these people set free and from their addictions and set free by inner healing and having the main points that may have nothing to do with aliens or the demonic, but just injury points, wounded points that need to be healed so that you shut the doors for these enemy influences. This is how I was able to transition from ministering as a biker to other bikers in a biker community over to ministering to victims of alien abduction. It's the same enemy using just a different outer veneer, but the same principles, the same methods are used. So alien abduction is not some special formula. It's just realizing that some of this can be delusional. It's quite traumatic to have that kind of experience and then try to explain to anybody. I mean, even right up to this day, I've had people that say, well, you're not going to believe this, but, well, no, I deal with everything that goes thump in the dark for over, 40 years. I'm not so vain as to think I've heard everything, because right about the time you think you have, you haven't, and then something new pops up. But now the Lord did tell me that towards the end of the end, there would be no more abductions, and there are no more new abductions. They're old ones, they're family passed down, mainly all about genetics, all about certain things that they want, that they're looking for. And my gosh, it was the same things that the Nazis' agenda to purify the human race was all about. It's just the outer different veneer, but it's the same agenda. It's the same.
It's pretty rare that you have a pastor that believes in aliens.
Well,
so what are aliens to you?
Aliens
are they? Who are they?
There's demons and there's aliens, and these are apples and oranges, totally two different entities. A demon is a disembodied spirit that died as something not fully human, and its remains now are incorporeal, and they're what whisper in your ears and pretend to be, dead people from the past, or whatever you want to believe. They'll be the the voices of aliens or whatever. Then there's actual physical entities of fallen angels who are just as physical as you and I. And this is what people don't understand. It's not that they're just transforming themselves into the likeness of a human. They have a physical body. When they fell away from the Lord, they had a free will choice to forsake him, which means they had a soul, which means they had a way to depart and separate from God. And when Satan was the first one to do that, he totally went insane, breaking fellowship with the Lord. But he was a physical entity. Now, the physical entities that did the incursion in Genesis 6, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they were residents of the heavenly realm. They came back down and made a big mess of everything. Not to get into a long involved story, but there's different casts of characters. There's the Nephilim, which are said to be the giants, the fallen ones. There are the Gabor. You never hear about the Gabor. Everybody talks about the Nephilim, the sons of God, and the daughters of men. But you don't hear about the Gabor. The Gabor is a very significant, important part of this whole scenario, and one that describes a portion of what others don't fully understand. Pre-flood skeletal remains of the giants, they were as tall as possibly 30 feet tall. After the flood, they were only 7 to maybe 12 feet, 15 feet tall, as recorded in the Bible from the Philistines.
So how did Goliath. They survive after the flood? Were some of them on the ark?
Well, see, the thing is that when Cain killed Abel, he was sentenced to wander in the earth and tucked away safely so that he wouldn't be killed. And Cain's descendants were sentenced to stay in the earth. They knew prophetically someday there would be entities that the sons of God would come from the heavens, or claim to come from the heavens, and that this was going to be their time to reclaim the surface of the earth. And so these are tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Nordics.
So the ones that say they're coming from the heavens are actually coming from the depths.
You got it. Exactly. Yeah. And they knew this. So so during the flood, they just simply laid claim that, hey, our home is inside. So, the whole surface could be flooded and wiped out, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen on the inside of the earth. And it didn't. And my gosh, it was even Ralph Epperson who wrote The Invisible Hand? Iconic. I knew Ralph, and he was an amazing man. Gosh, he's probably not around anymore. He 80s when he used to be on our podcast shows. But Ralph claimed that he said, after the flood, all of these certain ley-lined intersections, everything was destroyed by the flood, but they rebuilt monuments as part of the rebuilding of the Tower of Babel. They rebuilt these different monuments unless they be scattered abroad. Well, they knew they were going to be scattered abroad, so they wanted to maintain all of the knowledge that it existed. So they rebuilt it after the flood. You got to remember, people lived to be 800-900 years still at that time. They started a slow diminishing time. So it's very likely that Noah knew Abraham. He could have had dialogue with him. There was a lot of history going on then, so he could have still been around for a long time yet. So some of these understandings can really put a different spin on some of the things that have been popular. One of the things I remember when a series called Hunting Hitler came out, one of the main supporters of this was a guy that was actually with his last name was Zimmler or something like that, but he was actually with Stormfront. Stormfront was a neo-Nazi organization trying to promote the fact that Hitler died, he was spared. He escaped and went to Argentina, and then was in that German colony there, and then escaped over to inside the Hollow Earth. No, he died according to the scriptures in Daniel 12th chapter to be the first of his kind, and the same but opposite of Jesus Christ. And so my claim is that the Nazis never lost the war. They just changed addresses. The paperclip scientists that were brought over here, I warned in my book, written, like I said, 28 years ago, I warned in my book that you're going to find out that 2 and 3 generations from them, they're going to lead both political parties. They're going to be heads of state. They're going to be governors. They're going to be in all 3 branches of our government. And by golly, that's exactly what has happened.
You said it really quickly, so those that are listening might not have caught it because they're listening on the radio right now. They don't see us, but you were talking about the spirit of the Antichrist and Hitler, weren't you?
Yeah, well, and the thing is that it's more important. What I tell people, it's more important, instead of playing pin the tail on the Antichrist, it's more important to know the spirit of Antichrist. Antichrist is going to have a messianic type persona. He's going to oppose Christ, yet he's going to imitate everything that Christ did in the same but opposite fashion. Once you understand that pattern, you can see that many things have already been fulfilled.
I bring it up because this doesn't have anything to do with what you're talking about, but it verifies what you're saying. I was investigating possession of a little German girl. Maybe you've heard of her name, Anneliese Michel. Have you heard of her? You've not heard of her. I might be saying her name wrong. But she was possessed in the 50s. No, I'm sorry, it was the 70s is when it was. And I got the recordings of her, but it's in German, so you wouldn't understand what it's saying. If you look at the subtitles...
you know what? I think I know who you're talking about now. Her
name
was Barbara.
Well, no, her name was Anneliese.
Oh, okay.
This girl was... I'll give you a link after, and you can...
Back during that time, there were a whole lot of people, and a lot of them were sons and daughters of some of the Nazi scientists that were continuing on their experimentation with their own children.
You know what? I didn't look at that. Incredible. But I saw the footage because the priests recorded it, audio recorded it, and you're listening to it, and you can hear it talking in the, how do you say it? A non-sex demon voice, if you ever heard one.
Right.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds real, but I'm listening to what she's saying. I'm reading the transcript. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would a demon be talking to these priests about religious things? How it doesn't like this part of the Catholic Church, and it doesn't like how it changed the prayers here. I'm like, what kind of crap is this? I mean, this is something like a devout junior high. And then I thought, wait a second, because the demon's messing with their beliefs. It's messing with the priests. It's trying to give them doubt. And then that made sense. But then it came to the part where you're involved in this part. It made me think of you because I saw your interviews before. And it said, the priest asked its name, and it didn't give its name. It said, I am Hitler. I am Nero. And it started naming
all the different,
incantations of the spirit of the Antichrist. And it gave them all. And I'm like, well, that's not a person. Then later I realized, well, that was the point.
The spirit of Antichrist, yes.
When they had that person that was in power, that was putting the Christians to death. And in the Bible, when you're looking at God's judgments, when because he lets a lot of things go on, right? A lot of people don't believe in him because of it, because he lets children die and he lets fires happen and he lets people be evil. But there's one thing he does not allow, and it's when someone gets to the point where all the true learning about God is outlawed. He doesn't allow that. Right. And that happened in the Tower of Babel. That happened in the time of Noah. And that even happened in the time of Jesus Christ. Yep. When he was in the temple and he overturned the money tables because they didn't let the Gentiles come in there and learn. They weren't letting the true learning from God get out. And that's when he comes back, and that's when he judges. And that is just along that same line of the spirit of the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. Of when it comes to power in each of those times and as it goes after that. And it kind of lets you know where we are now.
Definitely. Yep. Well, I've always said that the spirit of Antichrist has been in a human host all throughout history, going back probably to Nimrod, maybe even back to Cain. And it can be, it's traceable by the fact that they are going to assume a messianic, following and charisma, and yet they're going to oppose everything.
They completely have the will of the people. They are the popular party.
Yep. Wide is the way, and many there be that follow their way in, and narrow is the gate, and straight is the way, and very, very few will follow. So you follow the crowd, you're probably going to be in trouble. All my life, I've been one that when I see the crowd following somebody, I go, okay, I'm going to wait back and I'm going to see where the train wreck is, because it's going to happen, because I'm not, you try to make me believe in Jesus, and I'm going to be doing the opposite. Now, if you compel me to, through logic and reasoning, why it makes sense to follow him, I'm going to listen to you, but I'm not going to have it force-fed, crammed down my throat. And I think most people are that way, and it can be a safety link. It's in Genesis 3rd chapter. I will put enmity against thy seed and the woman's seed. Well, enmity means a natural intolerance and hatred. So I had one woman call me up one time, and she was scared to death for her children because she had Rh negative blood. She had in her family, they had a lot of twins, but they also had 6-digit fingers and toes. And she says, is there a chance these are the traits of the Nephilim? I mean, I'm worried not for me, but for my kids. And I said, I got good news for you. This really concerns you. I mean, your position of salvation for you and for your children, right? And she says, yeah. And I said, well, I want you to read Genesis 3rd chapter there. And I read that scripture. I said, what do you think that means? That means if you truly were not redeemable, you wouldn't care one thing about your position with God, your children's position with God. You would hate God's people. You would hate God's spirit. You would hate the mention of Jesus. I said, that's not you. You're concerned because God's love is in you, and God's love is in your children, because you've trained them up. You told me you trained them up in the ways of knowing Jesus, in little Sunday school, stories. That's where the seeds are planted. I said, our God is not cruel. He's not going to tell you that you're not redeemable and then let you fall in love with him. You wouldn't fall in love with him if he was truly not your Lord. There's two seeds. That's a fact. And some theology, says, oh, no, there's no, well, there is, I'm sorry. And there's no scriptures that deny it. Jesus said, an enemy had, at the last times of harvest, an enemy had sown seed amongst his seed. Let them grow up until the time of the end. And then you can separate the wheat from the tares. Wheat and tares look identical until they come to their full fruit. A tare is completely different from a wheat, and so obvious you can sort out and pick out between them. And that parable right there tells us there's definitely two seeds. And in the end days, we're going to see what's rather obvious. And I think we're seeing that. We've seen it repetitively in history, and now we're seeing it in the last of the last days, which, this world's spinning out of control. And even people that once gloried in the things of this world, it's gotten so out of control. There's Democrats turning into Republicans. There's Republicans that are renouncing, both sides, saying, this is crazy. And they're seeking God's face instead. So we're seeing this separation of wheat and tares. And all these things, that's just the way it has to be. And my thing that I deal with more now with people, and what I try to assure them is giving them hope, is that we can get past all of this. To him that overcomes will I grant to sit in my throne, even as I have overcome and sit in the throne with my Father. If you've seen the Father, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So if you want all this crazy stuff to stop, it says, and when this gospel is preached into all the world, then the end will come. So if we're going about doing our Lord's work and doing whatever it takes to bring others to Christ, to plant seeds, not to pressure people, not to, be judgmental, but love everybody where they're at and show them God's love by being extraordinary people. To be extraordinary means you have to have an extraordinary life, which means extraordinary. You can't do what everybody else, well, you don't have to do that. You can get a lawyer and sue them guys. You shouldn't. No, love your enemies. But first, you got to learn how to love your brothers and sisters. Well, if you're sitting there arguing about, am I going to see two thrones and a dove when I get to heaven, or am I going to see just one throne? Let's wait and see. What does it matter? Did God choose this shirt for me, or was it predestined for me? Hey, the thing is, you're stuck with a shirt. How you got it doesn't matter. Let's work together and do the Great Commission. We need to have unity in the body. And that's something that
I think a lot of people have a problem with one of the greatest commandments of all, and that's loving God, right? Then he said, love your neighbor as yourself. So what's the second one? Loving yourself? You got to be able to love yourself before you can love your neighbor.
Well, and
a lot of people are confused.
Yes. And that can only happen when you can see yourself as
valuable to God. Jesus left everything to come down. He didn't have to come down here. He had everything, the ultimate, right there beside God.
We are not inherently evil. We are inherently naive. That's why he calls us sheep. Sheep will fall off a cliff on their own, not even knowing it, just following everybody else because they're so dumb. And so that's why he said, feed my sheep. I mean, we don't have a evil sin nature that makes us naturally evil. We are naturally naive, therefore subject to being seduced and tricked into wrong ways of thinking, wrong ways of doing things. Well, that's what needs to be corrected.
I was thinking about that, exactly what you're saying. And I thought about it real hard. I'm like, well, what is the equivalent of that? And my mind rewinded all the way back into Eden, when it says the serpent convinced the woman about, the fruit, as it says. But basically all that is someone coming up to you, Jim. What if someone knocked on your door, came up like, hey, Jim, let me show you this. This is something that you're missing, and you can have it. All you got to do is take it. It would make your life better. You would have more. All you have to do is this, It's like saying, here, enter in with this illegal activity with me. I mean, most people don't know it, but I'm letting you in. You can do it. Life will be better for you. It'll be better than what you have.
Yep.
It's like that want of better, seeing somebody drive that better car or seeing somebody have that better house, and you realize that it was all a sham.
Well, the thing is that there's always an easy way out that doesn't cost you anything, just to follow, but simply just to follow blindly whatever they're saying. But it's always a shortcut. It's an easy way. The Lord said that the narrow is a road, and few there be that go in. Why? Because it's a rocky road. It's a tough road. We have to get, our soul has to be conformed to the likeness of the mind of Christ. In order for that, we're going to go through trials and tribulations. It isn't because we're bad, we're being punished. I mean, there's one particular denominational church that they're taught that God has a stick and a lightning bolt. He's either going to zap you or whap you all the time if you're not good and bad, and it's all about works. And so when you're growing up being taught that God is just a mad God that is going to zap you or whack you, it's hard to understand and get to the unconditional love that he has for us and the offer of protection and provision if we would just obey him. And Romans 8:28, it says, and we know that all things work together for good to them who love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. You go back to the original Greek on that. What it's actually saying is that if you love God, you're going to obey God. We can't always obey God. There's blockages. There's things in the way. So to agree with God, I mean, where it says, we know that all things work together for good to them of God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Called according to his purpose in the Greek actually means to agree with God. Lord, I agree with you that this is wrong. I want to stop it. I can't stop it. I don't want to stop it, yet I know I have to. Please help me out, Lord. I'm agreeing with you now. Do whatever you have to do to change me, to make this sin no longer a part of my life. Man, that's a prayer that God can answer right away, because you're coming in brokenness. You're realizing that I can't do this, and you don't want my sacrifices. You want my obedience, and I'm having a hard time obeying. Can you do what it takes to make me come to a place where I will obey you? That's God's love and unconditional love and provision. If he does that for us, and if we finally understand that and let God start working through us that way, we are going to be much more lenient to our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. They all have a backstory to explain why they do the crazy things that they do. They're hurting people, and hurt people are going to hurt people. So part of our job then, mine as a counselor, is to get people healed from that hurt. So they quit hurting people, and now they can understand people in a whole broader way than they ever did before, because they can start loving themselves. And if they can love themselves, they can love their brothers and sisters. And guess what? Then you can actually sincerely love your enemy. This is a bless them to do bad. That doesn't mean that we're supposed to be a floor mat to be walked on. I've told everybody, I've told some in the past, okay, you used up one cheek, you got to use up the other cheek. After that, you better watch it, because I'm gonna deck you. I'll lay knuckles on you, and then I'll lay hands on you for healing after that. But
Jim, you spent a lot of your time with the outcasts back when you were doing the motorcycle ministry, and then the time you spent in let's see, where was that? Roswell. You ran that museum there, which was really interesting.
The museum for me was the testing grounds. I had a lot of ideas that God had given me, but they'd never really been tested. So here I am in Roswell, New Mexico, the center for all things UFO and alien. Even found scriptures to back up where Roswell is in the Bible. And it is in the Bible. It's in Zechariah, fourth chapter, I think. Fourth chapter. Yeah, fourth chapter. But it was the proving grounds. Now, what I had learned from working in the bike community was simply the same methodology that I would use, just outer veneer, like I said before, for being in this other area of dealing with UFO alien abduction. And I had, my gosh, at a time it was rather dry spell as far as, when I had the bike ministry, there was a major outpouring after the hippie Jesus, revolution of the 60s. Things were calming down, but many people were seeing beyond that, and they were seeing and being touched by really wanting the real Jesus and not just a fake Jesus. and they found him. So there was an outpouring. We'd have a coffee house night. We'd have 10 people at one night in one evening get saved. Man, I haven't seen those days since then. But we're about to see it again. It's going to happen again, a revival like that. But when I was in Roswell, because of what I was how I could share and what I was being able to share, there was ministry for everybody. I mean, the name of my museum was Alternate Realities. People looked at it and thought it was alternative realities. So I had a lot of gays come in and thinking that it was something totally different. But you know what? Hey, Jesus loves you too. Okay, let me talk to you. Let me tell you what this is really all about. And so I got to minister to a lot of the gay community when I was down in Roswell. Whoever thought that would happen? I didn't. But, the flexibility is there. It's the gospel to every creature, to every person, everyone. Christ met us at our needs, and we need to meet people at their needs. We need to see that they all need Jesus. And to be pulled away from that, I was devastated. Right in the midst of all of this, he had told me that I was only going to be there for a short time. Well, I was only there from 2003 to 2007. And then I left to go back home. And he says, because of family. And I thought it was my family. We had a crisis going on at the time, and I went back to Michigan. But now I realized it was the family of God. I needed to be back at Detroit because this is where the last great revival that's going to hit all of the United States and then through all the world is going to happen at Ground Zero in Detroit, Michigan. When I first started the motorcycle ministry, I got in a major accident. I was taken to a little small inner city hospital, and George Bogle was an iconic figure in Detroit, and he was a person that had a night prayer line. So somebody had heard that. It was from our church, because I went to Bogle's church. I went to several different churches, and that was one of them, Evangelicals. And so this woman who was she was an African-American woman. She was had a couple of records out, very popular. She come into my room. She introduced herself, said she was from Bogle's church, and I thanked her for coming. And she says, Jim, did you ever wonder why Michigan is shaped like a hand? And I said, well, no, but it's just kind of cool that we can put up our hand and tell everybody where we, geographically where we're at. She says, well, it's the left hand, which is a defensive hand. She says, this is what the Lord told me about this. And as she was speaking, I knew that this was something profound and it needed to stick with me. So she told me the reason it's a hand is because this is the hand of God upon the entire world. And it's the left hand, the defensive hand. That in the last days, the last greatest revival is going to start in Michigan, specifically in Detroit. And it's going to be a revival that will touch everybody in America and then everybody throughout the entire world. That always stuck with me. And then now I've got on a little flash drive, and I pass them out like tracts to people. And it's all of the prophecies from Kim Clement, from Mark Taylor, David Wilkerson, all of them compiled like sheets, layers, give a solid picture of a person who would come originally whispering the name of Jesus, but then God would fill him with his spirit and he would be shouting from the rooftops the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that was the sound of the last trump, Donald J. Trump, our president. And I'm not talking politics. I'm talking the scriptures coming alive and pertinent for today. So I hope I haven't lost part of your audience because they've written him off. I had a ministry partner for many years. 10 years. We weathered some very hard storm against what we were trying to promote with the whole UFO alien deception. And because certain things didn't happen the way he thought they should happen with Trump in the 2022 election, he discontinued all fellowship with me. My oldest son, who I love very much, has nothing to do with me anymore because he thinks I'm a darn fool for supporting Trump. I got to admit, when I first heard he was going to become president, my first thought was, oh, great. We got a corporate fascist who's going to, sell out to the highest bidder, our country. And that was what I thought. But then I quit listening to CNN and I listened to CBN, and I heard God's plan and what he had planned. And it wasn't politics. It was that Trump was a part of it. Now, to back up and prove some of that, do any of your audience right now, just Google it. I don't think they've changed too much because they can't change it. But find out who Dr. John Trump, who he was, and how he impacted America in the civilization. Now, he had ended up with every note, every project, every patent that Nikola Tesla ever worked on. It was all given to him. They at the end of the war and everything, they wanted to know after he died, well, is any of this significant? Is it important? Should we be concerned about it? Because, he was working on a lot of really weird stuff. So he knew right from the get-go that this could fall into militarization, weapons of war, massive destruction on a space-time dimensional thing that would wreak havoc, pretty much like what CERN is already doing. And so he got back with them, and they said, so is there anything to be concerned? He says, no, it's a lot of psychobabble, just a lot of calculations and stuff that really didn't make any sense. They said, okay. He says, well, you want this stuff back? They said, no, you can keep it. It's junk. We don't need it. So Dr. John Trump got all the goods. Now, why did they trust him that way? Because Dr. John Trump, they were working on trying to make radar work or X-rays work. Yeah. And they had the formula, but they couldn't make it work. So they used just about every theoretical physicist with electronic background, and it just didn't work. And they said, you know what? We need to recruit some new blood to get into this assignment, this program. Dr. John Trump worked on the program for 2 weeks and had everything solved, and X-rays worked. They held him as a high esteem as somebody that really, knew his stuff. That's why they trusted him to give him all of Nikola Tesla's stuff. So Dr. John Trump had a favorite nephew that he knew loved America and wanted to protect America in spite of what all of us might have thought. And he passed that on to him. And he opened up an independent private laboratory and started working on a project called the Looking Glass. And of course, they've been able to try to find ways to debunk that and everything. But I mean, this is stuff that is not hidden records. It's not encrypted. It's there on the internet. And all you got to do is do a little minimal amount of research, and you can find out these things are actually real. Now, CERN has screwed up some of these things already. Last year, they were claiming that this is going to be the biggest impact merger that they've ever had since September 23rd of, I don't know, gosh, what was it? Whenever they first fired it up, I think it was, I want to say maybe 2015 or something around that area. And it has that Mandela effect. It's, even written in Mein Kampf, it says, he wrote that in order to believe a big lie, you have to have an element of truth, but truth that's always put in speculation and kept active with controversy. So this is where CERN, where a lot of this other stuff is, that's right out of Mein Kampf, My Struggle, by Adolf Hitler. And I actually read that book. Of course, I read Helena Blavatsky's book too, and both of those people, they're brilliant in some ways, but they're a lot of vain psychobabble. And that's really a lot of what it is. It's psychobabble. When you compare it matched up to the scriptures and what the scriptures say, it's a lot of stupid psychobabble. Sounds good, can tickle your ears with a form of intellectualism, but the same bottom line is you can be your own God. You don't need anything but yourself. Okay, let's see how that works for you when you stand in front of them. I don't think it's going to work out.
So to get back
I'm sorry, I got kind of on a sidetrack bunny trail, but
going back to the Nephilim and the sons of God had I guess it would have been sons and daughters with the daughters of men, the Nephilim. So you said there was the Nephilim, and then there was that other word. What was that other word?
The Gabor.
Gabor. Yeah, I've never heard that word before. So you're saying the Nephilim and the Gabor and the demons are living in the hollow earth?
Pretty much, yep.
And the Gabor, those are the ones that are the aliens as we know them.
Well, the Gabor are those that, let's see, I don't want to get this mixed up. There were the Titans, which were, the ones that first descended. So we would call the Titans the sons of God. And their offspring, the Gabor, their offspring was the Gabor, not the Nephilim. The Nephilim were already there. Mm-hmm. And this is, you can see this in the narrative where it says, and also after that. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men. The same bore the mighty men of renown, the Gabor. Now, when the Apostle Paul was in, where was that? In Ephesus, I think it was. They had a God to the unknown God. Mm-hmm. And he started talking about, well, let me tell you about the unknown God. They had him just in case they forgot when they didn't want to kick off the wrong God. So he started telling them about Jesus Christ. Well, at Mars Hill, where they had these debates and everything, they would do that as a way of gathering information. And they mistook Paul as being one of the Gabor, the mighty men of renown, because they were normal-sized human beings, looked human, but they weren't. They were the offspring of something that should have never been. And we can see just how that doesn't work. When you get anomalous people that were never part of God's productivity and plan, you look at Lot and how his daughters got him drunk, and he didn't have any offspring, so they bear him children, got him drunk. But this is, interbreeding, and it's like they were all the ites, the Amalekites, the Amorites, the Hittites. Everything with an ite is bad news for mankind. Even when it said that Ham walked in backwards because he had seen his father's nakedness. Well, what could that mean? Well, in Leviticus, it says that the father's nakedness is his wife. Another inbreed story. 1/3 of Ham's descendants were tainted by this. Now, I'm not a racist or anything. I'm saying this is true biblical facts, that all three races have had a contaminating quality to them. None of us are. Somebody there was literally their own grandpa. Yeah, I used to sing that. I'm my own grandpa. Yeah. Another sci-fi movie. Hilarious movie. Messed everything up. They moved to the inner earth. I remember, because the program we're on, I can't show the biblical passage I was going to show. I can't show the footage I was going to show. I had the inner earth, but I guess I'll just have to say, use hand puppets or something. But in the Bible, when it's talking about the flood, it doesn't just say it rained for 40 days and nights. I mean, the ground actually opened up and water flooded out of the ground. Yes. And and later some of it went back, but the windows of heaven were broken too. That was a canopy that was once, at one time there was a canopy so thick that there was no the temperature was about 72 degrees all year around, and there was moisture in the morning, dew caused from the canopy that caused the watering of plants and green life and everything like that. So the windows of heaven broke. So the canopy was broken. So this poured down water. This also allowed the beginning of a declining breakdown in our genetic code from the harmful rays of the sun. And it gave us life no longer at 800 years, but down to 125 was the maximum as far as what God had said. But even worse, in the time of Christ, it was like 75 if you were going to be really old, but the average person only lived to be about 34, 35 years old. So, but that was man's own doings, not, from God. God had promised, what was it? I think the last promise that was in there was 70 years and 10 more if you honored your father and mother. So, that was basically science. I mean, just pure science. God created science. He's created the way we do things, and just because we can discover how he does it doesn't mean that we bring it into control. A virgin can have infertile vitro implantation. I mean, it doesn't take away the fact that the Son of God came to become like one of us. It just explains how it can happen. So they're conceived by the Holy Spirit, which, DNA and blood from the Spear of Longlease, along with Ron Wyatt's discovery of the Ark of the Covenant, has proven that kind of genetic alteration. So that Mary was a sinner like all of us were. She wasn't the Queen of Heaven, free from everything. So, I mean, there's a lot of man-made doctrines that are going to be shook up, as Peter said, so that the only thing that remains is what's sound and true from the Bible. So there's going to be this great shaking up. So that's just some celestial earthquake. It's a rearrangement of the knowledge of the things of heaven. That's why the Lord told me to have my ministry named Echoes of Enoch, because I'm going to echo the ministry that Enoch had. Enoch was taken into heaven, shown all the secrets, so that he could show how the proper way it all fits together, and not the way that the sons of God were distorting and twisting everything into following them as gods. So the hollow earth, it's not just a theory. I think I've taken it from the scriptures and made it a biblical fact, a biblical reality. When Jesus said to the thief on the cross, "This day you should be in paradise with me," Peter says, what is it that he first descended into the bowels of the earth, or into, what did he say, Abraham's bosom? And even, Jesus described it, when
it absolutely does talk about that. It talks about Abraham's bosom, and talks about the different levels. It talks about it being the earth. It talks about hell being an earth.
Yep.
In the depths of the inside there, it says it in black and white.
Well, when he was talking about Lazarus and the rich man, he says that Lazarus died and the angels took him to paradise. Now, the rich man died and the angels took him to and he went to Tartarus, the upper level of hell. Now, there was a great chasm between the two, and they could both talk to each other and see each other, but they couldn't cross one to the other. And he says, "Oh, let me go back and just dip, your finger and give me a taste of water. I'm thirsty. I'm dying here. Please let me go back and talk to my brothers so that they'll believe." And the Lord says, "Though they have Moses and the prophets, and though one come back from the dead, it's not going to work." So paradise, everybody thinks is in heaven, but Peter said he first descended into the earth. "This day you'll be with me in paradise." Paradise, Abraham's bosom. When people wore a robe, a toga, they would tie it at the waist, and then the bosom part of that robe became a pocket. And inside that pocket, they'd go to market. They'd use it as a shopping cart. They would stuff food in there and stuff. A shepherd, because sheep were, so dumb, they would stray. If one kept straying away, the wolves and other predators would see that one away and would just go ahead and run it down and devour it. So in order to save the sheep, they would break a leg and put them in the pocket to keep them safe. Abraham's bosom, a safe place, but paradise inside the earth, not on the outside. When Cain killed Abel, he was sentenced to wander in the earth, away from the face of God, and to be hid there so that he wouldn't be killed. So this is all talking about a very literal, physical, hollow earth.
Are you thinking he was blonde-haired and blue-eyed?
Well, when you look at all the attributes after the flood of the three people that suddenly, I don't know, somehow we had one race and then all of a sudden we turned into a rainbow race. We had Ham, Shem, and Japheth. You look at all the attributes of Japheth and all the attributes of Cain, yeah, they line up 100%. So one is the surface version and one is the internal version, and which is all part of that is all part of Helena Blavatsky's writings about that Hitler had. That was his Bible, pretty much. Secret Doctrine was pretty much his Bible. All of his occult beliefs were. He didn't just dabble in magic. He didn't believe. Matter of fact, he made fun sometimes of Himmler because Himmler was doing all kinds of things on a religious basis, but he just saw everything as purely encrypted science. There was science and technology to be utilized to bring back the Superman that existed before the flood. And so that was his whole agenda. And like I said before, the spirit of Antichrist in everybody and anybody, but one person would come back twice, making him different than any other individual. Yeah. And, numerology and, Nero 666, yes, all these things are true and they're real, but one guy's going to come back twice.
Are you talking about after the head wound?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. After the wound to the head, but also he would come with a fierce countenance, and he would destroy the people of the holy ones in some horrendous way that would always be remembered. The people of the holy ones means there's a detachment there. They're not my people, the prophets, my people, the Hebrews. Because Jesus said himself, because you have forsaken me, the scepter will be given to another nation, another people that you know not, that know you not. And so this is definitely what happened after he did the face-off with Pilate. Pilate was trying to find a way to, get him off the hook. And he said, this is not my kingdom. If it were my kingdom, my angels would come and deliver me. This is not of my kingdom. Well, it's like what the words were in the Greek in that whole dialogue with Pilate. This is not my dimension. If it were my dimension, I would be safe. But it's for this purpose I came into the world, to be the sacrifice. So, talk about a God with guts, man, and humility. It's just amazing. But so the thing is that there clearly is a hollow earth, and there are entities there, and Japheth's attributes match up 100% with empire builders. They're the ones that created, everything from music to culture to science, and independence from God. Unfortunately, I hate to say it. And so the attributes of Cain and the attributes of Japheth are one and the same. And this goes, like I said, to Helena Blavatsky's psychobabbling Secret Doctrine and all her other writings.
What was she? She was some kind of a witch, really is what she was, right? She was involved with a lot of channeling.
Well, she did every kind of thing like that. She was a royal. She was royalty from Russian royalty. She was a maverick. She was, lived on her own. She was shacked up with a guy named Wilcox, and in the 1890s to be shacked up, I mean that's just like unheard of. So she was a woman definitely ahead of her times in her moral decadence as well as her belief systems. But her beliefs, her writings, were very eclectic. They were very, they had a lot of logic behind them if you didn't know what the Word of God says. It seemed to all make sense. She was no dummy by any means. She was brilliant. And she had access to money's influence. She went to the Himalayas. She made contact with two lamas there, Hutumi and another guy, and from them she got direct words from the inner earth masters that were there, and they were making all kinds of promises and predictions. Of course, we're talking, fallen angels living, just chilling out down there, and spinning a yard. I mean, if you're willing to listen, they'll keep talking and telling you all kinds of stuff to make you doubt, everything, or to make you build up this whole elaborate lie that is so elaborate. People go, that can't be a lie. My gosh, that's well thought out. That's makes a lot of sense. And again, people that don't know what the Word of God says.
When you're talking about Hollow Earth, you're talking about there's an entrance, and if you knew where it was, you could go right in there.
Yeah.
Or if you were allowed in there.
Now, let's see. There was 2 people. Oh gosh, I can't think of what was the name of it? It was the chronicles of 2 people, a man and his son, who had sailed in the summertime over the Arctic Circle. And they soon found themselves in a warm environment. And see, so it's like the hollow earth isn't like just a big hollow thing, and you could go into the opening, go boom, and fall in. There's pressure of gravity pushing on the outside, pushing the earth, holding everything together. But on the inside, a central black sun, which probably could be even like a black hole or something, but this order of the black sun was after the writings of Blavatsky describing this hollow earth more, and it probably has something of a reality to it, where gravity is pushing out and away so that it equalizes at the openings in both the Antarctic and the Arctic, so that you could sail a ship right into it and not even be fully aware. Now, Admiral Byrd's first expedition was to the Arctic.
That's the clip I had.
Right, and he was flying over, and all of a sudden he sees a Macedon and tropical vegetation and everything. It's like, what happened here?
And he took videos of it.
Yeah.
And they played it here at the movie houses as a newsreel right in front of the movies.
Well, my grandfather, in 1964, I was going to buy this book and it's an iconic book now, called The Hollow Earth. And he told me, he says, "Oh no, Jimmy, I was in the theater, and Movie Tone News had a newsreel, and they showed his expedition. They showed the Macedon. I saw all of this stuff." Well, it was only on for 2 months or 2 weeks, and then they pulled it from the air and kept it hush-hushed. So nobody knew for sure whether it was ever even on or not.
The Mandela effect should be called the Byrd effect.
Yeah. Well, now Byrd had all of his notes and pictures and everything all mixed up. So people were trying to sort it out after his death. And I think they got it mixed up because when Admiral Byrd was sent to investigate the Queen Maud Land area where the Nazis, they knew they had base 211 there. And so they were going to flush him out and see what the heck was going on. Well, they were outfitted for like 8 months or something, and they were only there for a couple of weeks. And a couple of months. I'm sorry, a couple of months. And on the way back, Admiral Byrd had said something to an Argentine news press that they came up against aircraft that could go from pole to pole in a matter of minutes, and that they were warned to.
Those were in the clip too.
Yep.
Cylindrical vehicles.
Yep. And that was Nazi technology that escaped to Nazi Germany. I mean, there's even a mention about the hawk that flies to the extreme north, fleeing, what had been done in Europe. And that's a scripture that I think it was the 42nd, 41st chapter of Job is amazing. If you go back to the original Hebrew, and oh my God, man, it's giving you a whole scenario, this whole thing that we were just talking about. And it's the way that one chronicle was written, it was as if he was surprised all over again. Oh, that's amazing. It's like, no, if it actually would have been legitimate, I think it was just a result of mixed up notes and then people making commentations on it, not knowing what they really had in their hand. But Admiral Byrd was already familiar with the transitions of, the inner and outer Earth. So when he flew over in 1947 in Operation High Jump, he would have said, "Oh, this is just like before," but he didn't. He was all surprised all over again. Well, that part was added in by somebody trying to promote the idea, but he didn't have to do it that way. He could have just stuck to the truth. There was enough information there. But the story goes that they were taken up in a UFO and they were brought into the inner Earth. And then these blonde-haired, blue-eyed Nordics had warned them about testing nuclear weapons and to stop using them because they're going to destroy the Earth. And if they wouldn't let them do that, they're going to come out and stop them. Now, to the day that he died, when Admiral Byrd got back to the United States, he was told to not say anything about any of that, and he didn't, and he kept quiet for all that time as a obedient military man. But one of the most impressive scriptures that I found, and I had found it rather recently, long before I wrote my book, or long after I wrote my book, but that's why I got a part 2 coming out. And where it's talking about the locusts that are descending out of the bottomless pit, it gives 8 points of reference to the locusts. Having long hair of a woman. Let's see how it's... Anyways, all of the descriptions, I have another description defining what's the scorpion's tail. It's a prophet that teaches a lie. The long hair is the vanity of a woman's, beauty, and so they had faces of men. They had long hair. It ended up, the long story short, it ends up describing the Nordic as coming up as this locust invasion. The proof that I thought was the most amazing part was that the sound of the chariots, whereas the sound of many, or the sound of their wings, the sound of many chariots and rushing into battle, or the rushing of water. The Greek word for that is phone. Phone. Telephone. You're dialing in something and releasing them. That's CERN. You're dialing something in as an address, and you're releasing them.
So are you thinking that at the point of Armageddon, that's the final battle here on Earth, where everybody that's in the military and any nation on the Earth gathers together to go to war against God, right?
Well, yeah.
Jesus, basically, because he comes down and defeats them all. But they all stand up and they think they have a chance. But is that not only on the nations of the world, but the ones underneath and inside of the earth?
Well, I think by that point, it's going to be a pendulum swinging. And I don't know exactly how or when this is going to be. It'll be before the millennial reign of Christ. It'll be leading up to it. But I think for a while, for three and a half years or somewhere thereabouts, actually Christians are going to be in power, and they're going to be enjoying the riches of the evil that's been left behind. And it's going to be a major outpouring. It's almost like God showing, if my people were in charge, this is how reconstruction and rebuilding would be. This is how forgiveness would be. This is how my love would be. But then the other 3.5, all hell's going to break loose. That's where I think the locust invasion is maybe part of that. Then it could come in phase 1 and 2. One clandestine and one, as a literal invasion. But when it does happen, CERN is dialing these things in and releasing them. When we believe 200 million are crossing over the river Euphrates to, the Euphrates means stored up waters, frozen waters that are melting. That's what's been happening in the Antarctic. And we're seeing pyramids. We're seeing And these things, we're seeing what looks like a city. We're seeing things that almost match Plato's description of Atlantis. And it's probably all there in the Antarctic. And it's starting to melt. And it's melting not in salt water where everything's all rusty and crusty. It's in fresh water, which means dry it. You get a computer wet, dry it out, boot it back up, and it's ready to go. So there's all kinds of science and technology down there that I remember during Obama's last years of reign of terror. He went down and visited. So did the Archdiocese of the Russian Orthodox Church. So did Biden. So did a whole bunch of other people, world delegates all over the world, came to see what was going on. And they weren't just going there to feed penguins. They were going there to see what goodies are ready to be bestowed upon, all of them. This is Bible prophecy being fulfilled in a way that we never saw coming, but that's what's happening.
There's another interesting part in Revelations when it's talking about the coming of the kingdom and Jerusalem, actually.
Mm-hmm.
How the kingdom.
Oh my God! Yeah.
When the sky opens up.
Yeah, and it's a big square.
Jerusalem is?
Right. Yeah, New Jerusalem is a big square.
Jerusalem is a physical place. It's, there now.
Right.
Over there in the Holy Land.
The New Jerusalem is some kind of an object descending from the heavens.
It descends. It almost looks like some kind of interdimensional warp that opens up. Heaven comes down from it, and it lands right in the same dimensions, according to it, in the same dimensions that Jerusalem is there now. And the odd part about it is this. It says, the whole world passes away out of existence.
Right, a new heaven and a new earth.
The new heaven and new earth is right there.
Well,
with heaven there where Jerusalem is.
Here's what I think is interesting, is that David is reaccounting his victory of God making an appearance to defeat his enemy in the armies. And it's in 2 Chronicles, I want to say, I think it's the 11th chapter. And in the way he describes these, says, he maketh dark pavilions round about him. And it just really doesn't say too much. You go back and look every word up in the Hebrew, and understanding Pardes. And my God, it's describing that he came down, an opening of a wormhole. He came down with a shroud of protection around him, not to protect him, to protect the earth. This is BC. This is before Christ. So, when Moses looked, he had to look through a fiery burning bush, but he had to turn his back and just see the reflection. And so, it was not something that could happen as a direct encounter looking straight forward. So these preventions had to be taken. So it wasn't that God was defending himself. He was protecting the world from being destroyed because God the Father was making this appearance in front of Moses. And for David, when David is describing him coming down and destroying, his enemies, it literally describes the opening of a wormhole. It describes him coming, in this protective covering. And then he says that he knew what this covering was, and this is the living creature. Now, he goes into 10 chapters describing all of this, the first encounter on the River Khyber. Whenever there's geographical locations mentioned, this is to be taken as a literal historical narration, not some kind of allegory or anything. But then it does go through the rest of the chapters. He saw in a vision. So this is a vision. It's a little bit separate from the actual encounter. And you get all of these historical renderings of what's going to happen through the centuries. And then at the end, he says, and this was the living creature that I saw by the river Khyber, and I knew they were the cherubim A cherubim is one that's, giving a protective covering. And actually, a cherubim is like a heavenly taxi cab. So Satan, you were the main guy, but you were just nothing more than a taxi cab. Sorry, you're not as big as you think you are. And that's why everybody will look narrowly upon you and says, this is the one that shook the kingdoms of the earth. Because you're not going to actually look like so mighty and big as you try to pretend to be. So we're in for some interesting times. Now, I find it interesting that Star Trek, its original basis for all of Star Trek, I had it in my museum posted everywhere, was an introduction to get us ready for an extraterrestrial contact. It goes through a bit of a history. The program started one season and they were going to drop it and end it. And he said, no, we need to have this program on to get people ready for contact. They had a project going on, the MK Ultra program. It was in Canada because it was illegal here in the United States. Then it went to another program that they could do in the United States, but it was with a promoter who was familiar with this PhD physicist from, I think, Pakistan or India, who claims to have had direct contact with aliens from a national federation of planets who are going to eventually introduce themselves to us. So we need to get this ready, and let's continue this sci-fi program and put everything, all the information, necessary information in it so that people will be ready. So Star Trek, the rest of the episodes, for as long as it ever existed, was all about preparing us for contact. So I imagine the Cosmic Christ, when he comes, is going to be wearing a comm badge and saying he's from the National Federation of Planets. So you better believe I went back and studied every episode to see how all this fit in biblically. And it does. It was so real. I had to post all of it on my walls in simple explanations so that people could see that we've been Star Trekked. Because that's what it is. Star Trek is a Star Trek.
Do you have all this information on your website?
Yeah, I do.
There. All right, let me give out that. Again, it's echoesofenoch.com, echoesofenoch.com, and in the video, I'm going to have a link to it.
I need to get that whole thing redone because it's outdated. My gosh, it's on Word. I think it's Word Perfect. And they don't even, most engines can't even carry that anymore. It's so antiquated. So I've got a lot of glitches in it. I've got a lot of things that I just have not had time to. It's
a classic. What can you say?
Yeah. It's like
it'll take you back to the early 90s.
Well, I hadn't read my book in 10 years. So I thought, maybe I need to get a fresh look. I thought maybe I was not. I have a deeper personal relationship with the Lord, and I was afraid maybe I didn't come across with that. Maybe I had too much intellectualism on it. And I started reading. I got the first 4 chapters, and I'm going, my God, this is great. This is great stuff. I can't believe I wrote that. But, it wasn't me. It was through fasting and praying, and it was the Lord's process of showing me things and then showing me confirmed by the scriptures. So
it's like you're reading it again for the first time.
Yeah. I'm going, my gosh, this is really good. Lord, thank you. This isn't me that did this.
Who wrote this? This young guy's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, but and it was funny because it was at a time where I was really starting to question, I had to break with the group that I was with, and it broke my heart to do it. But as long as they would not acknowledge that if you have a church service, a Bible study, you are part of the Church of God. You have to be protected by God's provisions and protection, which is the 5-fold word ministry. You can't ignore it and make up your own. Well, we're just kind of a go-between, so we'll do our own thing. No, you can't do that. The enemy's going to tear you apart. And I had to just walk away from them, and I didn't want to, but I had to. And I was really questioning, Lord, is this really you? All of a sudden, people that I've, I've grown up with, people that I had one kid that lived right behind me, Ron. He was more family than, he was my other brother. We did everything together. We lived life together. His parents are really, his dad was kind of tightwad, didn't give him any money for anything. So he'd spend his own money and make sure that he always never missed my brother's birthday or my birthday. And he bought his own presents because he didn't have anything else way to do it. He was a special kind of guy. And, he ended up, it's funny because he flunked one time. So everybody thought he was going to flip burgers for the rest of his life. The guy's a millionaire, man. He's retired, living on just on his retirement alone, about $100,000 a year. And I'm so happy for him because he stayed focused and did what he wanted to do. But he called me just 2 weeks ago, scared to the bone. He said, Jim, when you first told me this stuff 15 years ago, I thought you were crazy. But you were my brother. I loved you, and it didn't matter. But I thought that part was crazy. Jim, I'm scared. Everything you ever said has come to pass 100% like you told me it would. Where do I go next? What do I do? I know I got to get in. You told me all the time that I needed to get into a church, hooked into a church that isn't afraid to discuss this kind of thing. I said, where can I go? What can I do? He said, well, I got good news for you. There are some places that you can fit in that aren't afraid to talk of these things. And now history is catching up. So people are taking all of this serious like you are. I said, keep in contact. We're going to keep you busy. We're going to have all kinds of stuff provided for you, and you'll stay in tune. I said, I know other organizations too in and around your area because you're in Florida. There's some good places to go, and I'll get you in contact with all of them. I said, but if you don't mind doing it on the internet, you can always come to our stuff too. We're going to be starting up all kinds of new stuff. So,
are you still doing a podcast? I know you're involved in podcasting for a while.
Yeah, well, we're going to continue more so now than ever before. Matter of fact, tonight was, Sunday night. Oops, sorry, Eric. We were going to do one, and we're going to, just kind of fix it together.
Tonight?
They're
doing it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we might get to it later. I don't know. Depends if I don't fall asleep.
Get on there at 8.
My day is so I never know. Like sometimes I'll get up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm an early riser anyway, so I'm usually up by. If I'm up by 8 o'clock, I've already missed half a day. So usually I'm up no later than 6, but sometimes 4. But today I had an early day, so. Come about 10 o'clock, I'm going to be toast. We'll see.
There's a lot of things to talk about. I mean, especially with the Trump indictment. I bet you have some things to say about that.
Well,
what we have to expect, the economy collapsing, them lying about it. No supplies in the stores. I can't get my sriracha sauce. I mean, all kinds of things going on that are being hidden from us, like we're idiots.
These train derailments that just happen to be in the groundwater to a leading major processing plant, or, these aren't coincidences. Look at all the fires, the plane crashing into a chicken processing plant and other places of meats and provisions. Infamal, there's a shortage on all of that. There is no shortage. They're purposely keeping this stuff away to create the shortages, to create panic, to create rioting.
And what was the pills that people needed for their, it wasn't anxiety, it was ADHD. All the ADHD medication has been stopped. Yep.
They're just trying to set everybody up to go completely bonkers. It is going to be, I think, during a time, where even Wilkinson said that there would be a couple of months it's going to look like we're in a total state of civil war. Every major city he saw on fire, burning, looting, robbing, stealing. And he says it's only going to be for 2 months. He said something would happen that would change everything. It's only going to be for 2 months. That was the last sermon he gave. Within 1 hour was his last sermon. And then he was involved in a head-on collision on a bridge in Texas.
Who was that?
I wonder how that happened. David Wilkerson.
David Wilkerson.
Remember Cross and Switchblade, Teen Challenge? He was the founder of Teen Challenge, now turned into Life Challenge. He was working in.
When did he pass? How long ago did he pass?
That was 2022? No, much earlier than that. I think it was around 2016, somewhere around 2016, 2015, somewhere around there.
So when are you thinking, like this November or January coming up?
You know, I hate to play the dating game because I've done it a couple of times and I got burnt on it, you know, and so I don't know, but there's enough, and we haven't gotten together to.
It's not going to get better.
To spin things together. My one friend, Matt, he's convinced that it could be 2 weeks and the dollar's going to crash completely. My other friend, Eric, the three of us were planning on doing a podcast, and we're going to do one on the possibility that it could be very soon. I know several people who are trying to sell houses right now before this crash. It's like getting out now while it's getting still good. Mm-hmm. And my one friend, fortunately, I helped do some of the painting in her house to get it prepped and ready. But she says that she's got such a great response. She's going to have an open house this weekend and might have it sold. So I hope she does, because in a couple of months, there's going to be no market for anything.
This is the same thing I've been hearing. I'm trying to can't wait to get my retirement money out while I still can.
Oh gosh, yeah. 401ks, you know, the banks, they've changed the laws now. That's why I'm with a credit union, because they're not under the Federal Depositors Insurance whatsoever. They're a totally different thing. But now if a bank can prove that it's insolvent and will go bankrupt on its own because of whatever external actions, they have the right now to confiscate all assets, loans, 401ks, everything, and never pay it back.
That sounds like a great law.
Oh man, I'll tell you, that's why when I found out that one, I go, okay, I'm done with banks.
That's just as good as the one where they're taxing everything from people that sell things on PayPal, sell things with eBay. So let's say Jim wants to sell his hat, that he bought, and he sells it for $2, even though he bought it for $8. They're going to tax him for it.
Except I am Echoes of Enoch Ministries is a legal ecclesiastical organization with the state of Michigan, and state rights. You can't touch me. You can't touch my stuff. You can't claim that tax because I'm tax exempt.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I should have tax exempted my radio station, but I didn't.
I haven't used it yet because it's all been just chicken feed, really, not, major big money. But when I'm about to put in for the plea for this, the Sacred Heart Church, the Catholic Church that I'm going to be moving into very soon, that's going to be some major money. I got to have all my ducks in a row, and I got to have everything, set. So I'm going to have a staff of people that really know the legalities and what to do. I'm sort of sharp on it, but not sharp enough on that kind of level. I need somebody that's top notch that's going to be able to handle that for me. Because there's always loopholes, But the thing is that so far, they'll find ways to get around it. My gosh, right now, if you are a Christian organization with a food bank, you can no longer distribute anything with an expiration date. Now, half the stuff you get donated to people are because they're expired. So who gets it then? I know several ministries now that have gone to set themselves up as a secular organization so they can distribute the food to the people that need it the most.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of secular places, food banks, like secular food banks that give out expired food.
Yeah, we have to, because they're found ways to penalize Christian ones.
Now, there's a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you if I ever got a chance to talk with you.
Okay.
And these are quick. There's one about, you saw the moon landing when you were growing up. Do you think it was real, or do you think
absolutely.
It was fake? You absolutely think it was real. Okay.
But you know what? I used to laugh at this idea of, oh, come on, I'm senior moment here. I used to laugh at the idea that there's a layer over our Earth that forbids anything from leaving our Earth's atmosphere. I used to laugh at that. What the heck was what did they call that? Darn it, I can't think of the name. But anyways, then I found out that whenever they have a launch, they call it a window of opportunity. And I've also noticed that when on these launch dates, they're also occult dates. And they're occult again. Old Hitler, he knew that there was technology encrypted in myths and legends. And so all of these occult dates are windows of opportunity to let us know when we can shoot something outside of the Earth's atmosphere. There are windows of opportunity, and they're on the occult nights. Now, NASA is totally, from paperclip scientists, centered around that kind of thing. I mean, the United States is the only one. They didn't even share that with Great Britain or any of our other allies or anything. Russians still don't know how to. That's why nobody else has gone to the moon. Only we know how to do it. Now, the Chinese, during Obama's reign, he had half of the answers, so they could get theirs out of the atmosphere. But when they went to Mars, they crashed. Why? Because they didn't have the opening. The same thing goes, this is a universal situation. They didn't have the opening access dates on the right time to try to land on Mars. So they crashed because of that that barrier. Once I saw the connection with the Nazi technology, with the ancient mythological things that we've grown up with in myths, these are all realities that were one time our reality. They're not myths. They're actually encrypted truth, encrypted in what we think are fairy tales, but they're not fairy tales. So minotaurs, mermaids, all of these things. It says that that all life had been corrupted in its ways. We're thinking a moral corruption. No, it was a physical manipulation corruption. They had all separated their paths and their ways. And that's in the Hebrew in Genesis 6. That's what we're really seeing there. And the same thing is just happening full circle again, with all of these inbreeding crazy things. Our science, all of it, is based on encrypted occult knowledge that once we understand that, we can see the science behind it and do things we couldn't do before. But the moon landing very, very definitely happened. Matter of fact, do you remember the TV program Mythbusters?
Yes.
Now, they tried to prove the moon landing wrong. So they used a NASA airtight vault, a vacuum, and they could reproduce every effect, the flag waving, the dust raising. They could reproduce everything in this vault to prove that it wasn't faked out. Now, could there have been some that were faked out? There might have been, because they were trying to beat Russia, so they embellished a little bit. Why wouldn't we? We could get away with it. So maybe some are, but most aren't. And certainly on July 22nd of 1969, that's my birthday, by the way. So I always remember the night or the day of the landing. It was real. We were the first ones on the moon. Well, we thought we were the first ones on the moon. Actually, from the Antarctic. And if you saw Iron Sky, there's more truth in that darn movie than you could ever imagine, especially Iron Sky Part 2. My gosh.
I don't think I've seen that.
Huh?
I don't think I've seen that one. I'm going to put that on the list.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, you got to watch both of those. My gosh, you're going to flip out.
I think I've heard of Iron Sky, but I definitely haven't heard of Part 2.
Oh, Part 2, they go into the Hollow Earth. They have a Feast of the Beast, which I said would actually happen.
Is this an old movie, Iron Sky?
Iron Sky is back in maybe 2016, 2017.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of this. I've been working hard not watching TV.
Maybe about 2020. Yeah, me too. I stream everything.
I have two more questions. Well, one's a comment. And one, I meant to ask you earlier, I didn't save it so long. It's not to be mysterious or anything, but you're positive that you were abducted by aliens, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Beyond doubt, yeah.
And let's see. There's a lot of people that believe in the flat earth. A lot of people are really convincing about it. I've had people give me a full list of biblical references to there being a flat earth, And
well,
what do you have to say about that?
I have seen those same scriptures. I did a video called "Why a Flat Earth,"
mm-hmm.
and then by utilizing proper hermeneutics and partis, it does say that it's the Earth is. How does it say it? Let's see. It says that it's fixed and. Let's say in the first part of the scripture, it says that it is fixed and immovable. And I say, see, that means it's flat. Well, what is fixed and immovable?
A flag is flat. I mean, it flaps.
Well, here's the thing:
the flapping earth theory.
Well, the fixed and immovable. Whenever the Jews write. The Hebrews wrote the Bible, if it was something prophetic, they're going to use the same statement over again to further define it. So the first one, they'll use nouns and verbs. The next one, they're going to use adverbs and pronouns. So they read left to right. We read right to left. So to do a thorough study, you have to exhaustively look at each word to see what is going on. By doing that, by understanding partis, you realize that what's fixed and immovable is a rotation and an orbit. And that's what the verse says. That's one of the main flat earth ones that they have.
There's one about the four corners of the earth, but that was just meaning a long way away, as far as the east is from the west, it didn't mean, flat.
Right. It means, there's a true north and there's a true south, but there's never, the four pillars from the temple, two of them were not to be measured because they couldn't be measured.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, you have a true north and you have a true south, but east and west is perpetual, like eternal. There's always going to be an east. There's always going to be a west behind you. There's always going to be a west. There's going to be an east behind you. That's why he says that he forgives our sins as far as the east is to the west. It's eternal. It's forever. So the four corners, when he says four corners, is not, like it's a cube. Although that does remind me when New Jerusalem comes down, it's described as a cube. And what is the most fearsome enemy in the Star Trek series?
The Borg.
Cube. We are the Borg. Resistance is futile. So, oh my gosh, it's like, are you kidding? Is this where you're going to take beyond science fiction? Yep, because you can't make this stuff up. So, now a lot of us have, I never believed in a pre-tribulation rapture. The Lord showed me, Jim, there is going to be one, but not like anything you've ever been taught, not like anything you've ever known. But I'm about to show you, and I'll walk you through the scriptures to prove it. And he did, and he goes like, wow, this, it makes sense. But we're dealing with a group of people that now have technology, both human and non-human, that can go beyond space, time, and dimension. And so that means they're waiting for a particular moment when there is going to be a removal, but the removal is going to be very small, so small that we're going to have to check our notes to see if what really happened. How come some of these people are gone and most of us are left behind? What's happening? It's going to look like everything happening at one time is the way some of us are beginning to see it now. So that Satan has his counterpart rapture. People are going to see people being beamed up like Skylight, if you remember ever seeing that movie. They'll be beamed up, and when we go to the marriage supper of the Lamb, some of those are going to go to the Feast of the Beast. And the only problem is they're on the menu. And
Lordy.
This I had a dream of, and this was way back in 96. And I did make sense to me then. Now, through time and everything, you can go online and just look at some of these rapture dreams, and there's all kinds. There's one, this little Indonesian 9-year-old girl. She describes it in great detail, and boy, it's just, there's a lot of dreams, and people are seeing, the same kind of a thing. It's like a simultaneous. Some people see, little orbs leaving the earth, and other people see people getting beamed up by ships and being told to go to certain places. And even Jesus said, when they tell you to go to the desert, when they tell you to go to the secret places are, probably the ley line, certain areas, don't go. Why? Because someday somebody's going to tell you to go there, and that's what you're going to wait for, and it's going to be the wrong one. Just don't do it. But
I have one more burning question. I can't remember what it was.
Oh no! You can't.
It was the most important one, too.
You got to remember it, because you know what's going to happen. You'll remember it at 3:00 in the morning when it doesn't matter anymore.
You'll disappear on me. I'll never be able to get a hold of you again.
Oh no! I think you're going to be able to see me more and more as I get more acclimated into my new place, and finally get it, unpacked, and I'm home. Now I can set up a studio and do the broadcasting. We're going to go full blown.
So you and your friends, you guys do podcasts, and I've seen, that you guys have done them for a while. I own an online radio station, and we're fully licensed, so we play whatever music we want to 24/7. Mm-hmm. But also, again, I do my show. I broadcast on the radio. We have a bunch of DJs and everything. If you guys are interested, I would like for you to be on that radio stream. So
that sounds good to me.
Just like what you're doing now. The only difference is you have this Studio King program on your computer, and you turn it on and log in and do your podcast, then log off. That would be the only difference. If you guys are interested in that, the reason why I did this is because, or the reason why I have the whole radio station and the music's to draw people in. I don't think it's anti-God or anything. I believe, we can play whatever we want and still be able to have biblical teaching on here too.
Sure. You gotta have bait to catch fish,
Exactly.
So you get the right kind of bait.
I also have my own website where I can stream live video to it. I don't have to depend on YouTube. I don't have to depend on any of the secular things telling me what I can't talk about. Whatever disease or whatever election I want to talk about, I can do it because I own it. On the radio, I own the radio stream, I own the website and the broadcasting, all that. I'd like you guys to be a part of that if you're interested in it.
No, I'd definitely be interested, man. Heck yeah. We can, we're on, what's the name of that one? Where you can play movies and all kinds of other different things. That's
YouTube?
No, I got booted off of YouTube.
See, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. That shouldn't have happened.
No, it shouldn't have. They told me that in particular, they didn't like my videos on Hitler. It was too controversial and inappropriate for children, because I showed actual. In one of the videos, I showed actual Holocaust victims being bulldozed into massive graves. They can watch porn, that's okay, but and they can have transgender people teach them, how nice it is to be the opposite of what you were created as. But it's inappropriate to see what really happened in history.
There's a difference between provoking and teaching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But again, it's their place. They have a right to do that because they own it. But it's technically not against the freedom of speech, even though it is. To let one out there. I found a way around that, and this is the reason why. And I figure that, Jim, if you're doing your job right and I'm doing my job right, then the Antichrist, when that time comes, will have a reason to come get us.
Yeah. Okay. This part here is where, and they love not their lives, even unto death. There's a martyr crown waiting for me. That's pretty cool. Okay.
They broadcast it every night. They didn't care.
Amen. Right up to the end, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer did.
Yeah, it's kind of like an underground thing is why I did this. The whole thing, you know, and I use my fame on YouTube. I use that to get the money for the radio station and to bring DJs in, and that's what I'm here for, freedom of speech and good teaching. So if you're interested in that, I'll send you an email with the details. Really easy.
Yeah,
won't cost you anything. All right.
What the heck that name of that other is? Here, I'm going to look at my phone here. Go back over here, and I'm going to find it. I thought I was going to find it. Come on. Oh, Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify. That's one that.
Did you get kicked off Spotify too?
Nope, we're still on Spotify. And so our podcasts are they just automatically go to Spotify and are, on there. So, now with that though, we usually do a delay. I got an editing thing, so I mix in different people and voices and blend it in, look like we're all together at one time.
So it could be what we do is you can either choose to do it live, broadcast live, right? Where you just have the program on your computer and you hit the broadcast button, it broadcasts live on the stream. You'd want to do that if you wanted to take live phone calls, for whatever reason. Or if you just wanted to already do the show, then I could just download it from Spotify and air that.
No, actually, I like the idea of live call-ins. That's where it gets interesting.
That's what I think so, too. There's always an excitement to having an event when something's live, but yeah.
Well, you make it more personal. Then you meet everybody's personal need. When the audience knows that they're going to get if they call in, they're going to get an answer. It's going to make sense. They're going to want to do it. They're going to want to hear, all the time.
Yeah.
It's when it's just kind of impersonal. Well, I mean, a true seeker of truth. They're going to chomp at the bit at having a program where they can call in and get an answer that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
just the way, I don't know, broadcasts are being treated. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. People want to listen to it. It's up to them to decide, Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you were on Coast to Coast. I mean, Coast to Coast isn't what it used to be. I mean, there were people on there talking about, I mean, you're talking about hollow earth. There's people talking about flat earth, and there's people talking about, well, none of that exists. I mean, hell, somebody's wrong. Somebody's misinformation. But who cares? Put it on there and let people listen to it.
There was a gal one time. They called me in 2009, wanted me to make an appearance. And they, it was a bailout. They had somebody bail out last minute. They wanted me to come and share my experiences and everything. So I did. And at the first break, he says, now, Mr. Wilhelmsen, you're way too biblical for our audience. You can't keep quoting scripture like this. And I said, what do you mean? I said, I'm using the Bible as a historical narration. I'm not telling everybody to turn, burn, shake or bake or make any moral decisions. I'm using it just like you would use the Bhagavad Gita or any other ancient text.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You did.
You explain this to your audience. You're not going to have any problem with anything. And so he let me explain a little bit. At the very end, he says, he just, at the very end of the show, he just hung up on me. Didn't even say goodbye. We'll have you back later, whatever. He just hung up on me. A Christian who worked for the show called me back up and said, Mr. Wilhelmsen, I want to apologize for what happened to you. She says, I got to tell you, you got more phone calls. This was in September when I did the show. She says, you got more phone calls tonight than anyone so far this year. I just wanted you to know that. And I go, thank you.
Oh, George didn't like that, huh?
Yeah, George, George came from Redford Township. George came from Redford Township. He's about my age, so we grew up together, not knowing each other at all, but being rival schools. Livonia, Bentley Bulldogs, and the what the heck were they? They were the Redford Rangers or something like that. I don't know, but we used to kick their butts in football.
You might have passed him on the track team or something. Before his mustache came in.
But I mean, I thought, and I was trying to hit it with him good on commonality, our backgrounds and everything, but I guess he just, I don't know, didn't like what I had to say. But recently there was a woman on, and she says, well, I got most of my inspiration from this this guy named Jim Wilhelmsen. You ought to get him on your show sometime. He was inspiration for me, and I'm sure he can, give you a lot of answers and interesting show too. I go, boy, that had to keep some coals of hot something or other on him, man, when he heard that. Oh boy.
Yeah, I was so cool. I always like Art Bell better, but
Art Bell he was really anti-Christian though. He didn't.
Oh yeah. His wife was a witch, but just as far as the show itself went, I like the way he produced it better. Yeah. Were you on his show?
Art Bell, no. I was a little bit before my time of. I was around during that. But both of them, they were way late at night, and I was a morning person, so I would never stayed up usually too late to watch them. But Art Bell, I have heard of him, and I heard a few of his shows, but I wasn't known enough then to, get on his program or anything. But I got a laugh out of that one that, you got to get this guy on here. Yeah, he already did.
Yeah, there's
I just figured I had an opportunity to actually talk to millions. My first time ever. Do I want to placate to him and soften everything up? And like I explained to him, I said, look, my only expertise is the Bible and what it says. I'm not a theoretical physicist. I'm not a scientist in any way, shape, or form. If I try to do this without quoting the scriptures, I'm going to look like an idiot, and I don't choose to do that. That's why I said, now you let me explain to your audience. I don't think you have a problem. And he didn't, I know my material, and I know that's what I got to stick with. And I got to thinking, okay, I got a chance to talk to millions right now. Am I going to blow it and just soften it down? No, I'm going to pump it up. So I got more, I did get a little preachy, a little ways.
I haven't heard it.
The bottom line of this, is, your only hope is going to be in a personal relationship with Jesus. Well, that didn't go. I'm sure that's why he wanted to hang up on me.
Oh, so you said that?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't going to be shy about that. I'm going to sit there and have a program, 2-hour program, and scare everybody to death and not give them the only hope is in Christ Jesus. No, I didn't do it in a very pushy way. I did it in a very, I think I segued into it in a very calm, relaxed, natural way. I mean, it wouldn't be offensive to anybody. And, well, unless you're George, I guess.
Jewish people, except George.
I was going to say, maybe George. Well, I don't know whether he was Jewish or not. He could have been. Who knows? I always thought he was Italian, but
he looks Italian to me.
That's what he looked like to me too. Yeah.
Is he still alive?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, he's about my age. I think he was only like 2 years younger than me, or something like that, maybe. Yeah.
Well, George Norrie, his show's too boring for me.
People were asking me if I'm still alive. I didn't know whether aliens.
I was wondering if you're alive too.
I know. So were a lot of other people, but it's just a bad events that happen all at the same time. Getting booted off of, getting booted off of YouTube. I had over 10,000 followers on that. Wow. And I lost them all over contact. They just wiped me off like I didn't exist.
For one mistake,
my Facebook page. Pardon?
For one mistake?
No, for my when Hunting Hitler was a real prize piece that everybody was listening to, and I kept saying that Hitler survived. He or he didn't survive. He died according to the scriptures, and here it is. And this is, look at the people, Stormfront and other people that are promoting this. These are neo-Nazis. Why are you listening to a bunch of Nazis? Don't get tricked. They just don't want you to know who this real guy, who he really was. So I was, boldly proclaiming it. Well, that's why I got booted off. But that's, I'm kind of like the same way you are. I'm not going to tone anything down. I'm going to pump it up. You tell me to tone it down, and I'm just going to get bolder. We're at the last of the last, man. Time's running out. It's like I'm not going to be shy about this stuff.
The more people are scared about what you're saying, the better, the more entertaining it is.
Well, and sometimes
while telling
if
the
I
truth.
can scare the hell out of somebody, I don't mind doing that, because the hell doesn't need to be in there. Let's get rid of it. We'll do it with kindness, though. I'm not going to scare you to death. I'm going to get you to find that there's a loving God that has provisions for you.
If we really knew everything that was about to happen in these next few months, I really think people would be a lot more afraid than they are. But we can't even see it clearly. We've been lied to so much, we don't even know up from down. We just get a little bit of truth.
Some people are so clueless. They just think we've got all the time in the world for everything. Oh, everything's going to be just as it always has ever been. I had one gal I met at the post office today. She only came in there for stamps. She ended up taking my book and got a little flash drive with all the prophecies about Detroit and what's going to happen. She got a whole lot more. She thanked me. She was really excited about it. She's, God, I only came in here for stamps. I can't believe you're telling me all this stuff. So it was neat. I'm getting more and more situations like that. I literally carry about 10 books in my car and autographed, and I pass them out to, like tracts to anybody that's interested in taking one. Time's running out. I don't want to end up with a bunch of books and I'll be gone. I mean, I want to make sure people get them now. They can start reading it now and get ready.
There's one thing talking about the end of times, but our lives are really short anyway. We could go here in a week, and 10 years goes by really quick. People just don't realize how close they are.
That's right. The only thing that's promised is, taxes and eternal life if we are trusting Jesus. Everything else is, on borrowed time. It's up to him. And look at all the major leaders that have passed away. I think God's just going to show that it's always him, not anybody else.
He does have plans.
Yeah.
He knows what's going on.
Yeah, you're not going to find him on CNN. You got to go to CBN, and then you can find out what God's plan is and get it. One of these days, I've been having several people trying to get me on Sid Roth's It's Supernatural. I'll get on there eventually. I know I will. But
I've got to go. Thank you for doing the interview with me. I appreciate it. We're about to run out of recording time on this program, so
okay.
I appreciate it a lot. Also, maybe we can talk again sometime in the future. I want to hear about when you were growing up and the part about you in the military. That's just a great story. The part where you almost died. The part where you gave your life over to God. That's the part I mean. And
yeah.
It's maybe a 20 or 30-minute story, but I really want to hear that.
Okay.
Someday. All right. I'll send you more details on broadcasting since you're interested in doing that. And it's
yes, absolutely
free, simple, and easy, but it'll get you out more, and nobody will be able to control what you say.
I know. I like that. I like that idea a lot. That's going to be great.
All right.
All right, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. You have a good night too.
You too. God bless.